It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Welcome to the HVACR videos live stream. Hello to everybody. Hopefully the excitement isn't too much and the anticipation isn't too much, because this is just going to be a basic, plain, mediocre Q&A live stream as usual. I'm Chris, I'm your host, and got a few things I want to talk about. Thanks so much to Jason, who's one of the moderators in the chat right now, because he posted a bunch of comments and different things about just trying to help everybody get used to these streams. So these live streams are kind of a question and answer kind of a thing. I usually have a pretty good list of topics to talk about. I usually go for about anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour-ish, somewhere in there, just depending on how I feel. If you guys have topics or things that you want me to talk about, do me a favor and throw them in the chat. We're streaming on 2 different YouTube platforms. We have a vertical format. We have a horizontal format. We have 2 different Facebook things. We have a page and a profile. It's really confusing to me. We're also streaming on Instagram. It's kind of weird though. Well, anyways, whatever. I wish I'm using a streaming software, and I wish they would like all the chat would be in the same thing and everybody could communicate, but it is what it is. If you guys have things you want me to talk about, do me a favor and throw them in the chat of whatever respective platform you're watching on, and put them in all capital letters. It really does help me to see them if you can, okay? But I realize sometimes it's a little difficult, especially on a phone. I try to get to them. If I miss anything that you keep posting in there, I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of different screens on my thing, and you know, my head's running in a million different directions. And if you know anything about me, I typically go off on a tangent talking about something that nobody asked me about, and then, you know, I just get distracted by the paint chip on my wall right here, or who knows what, right? But yeah, I'm just, you know, for those that don't know who I am, I don't know why you're watching, and why would you be watching if you don't know who I am? But my name is Chris. I'm just an HVACR service technician here in Southern California. I happen to film service calls, and what I do Soon I'm going to be filming a few more things that aren't quite what I'm normally used to doing. So stay tuned. There's some cool changes, but still going to be filming service calls too. But just some new changes coming to the channel hopefully soon. That's if all this craziness that I'm going through in this super top secret project that I keep telling everybody about goes through, right? But I've got some construction work starting. They're demoing the site, they're clearing things out, and you know, just to kind of ease the confusion. I'm not building a full-fledged training center. We're not at that level yet, okay? But it's something pretty cool, but it's not a full-fledged training center, okay? So just a lot of people have been emailing me, asking me, so I will say that right now. I'm not building a training center, okay? I'm not balling that much, but this still is probably one of the biggest projects and investments I've made into this YouTube channel. And it might be a complete flop, or it might be something cool, but I'm going to enjoy the ride while we go through this. And, you know, sometimes I have to say that this project that I'm working on, and I'm being very vague as usual, right? A few of you kind of have a general idea what's going on, but I'm being kind of vague just because I want to, right? Just to build curiosity or whatever you want to call it. But also at the same time, I don't want to build expectations. I don't want people to expect what's coming. So it's just some new changes. But selfishly, I'm working on something, and it's simply because I love fixing customers' equipment, but I can't experiment. Does that make sense? I can't break customers' equipment. I can't do cool stuff to it and satisfy my own curiosities because they've got food in their equipment. So that's all I'm going to say today. Again, revealing way too much. Realistically, this project, I'll tell you though, is going to be a couple months. So we're in the starting phases of construction, and then we've got a lot of other moving pieces that got to fit together and stuff. So realistically, it's not going to be after. More than likely, I don't know that I'll be making any videos until after like February. Likely is what I'm thinking, but you know, who knows? We'll see. Maybe some teaser stuff coming out, but it should be kind of cool, and it'll allow me the ability to kind of do whatever the heck I want to my own stuff. That kind of makes sense. So yeah, I got to stop talking about it, and let's get on to the live stream. As usual, got a couple things I want to talk about. Let's look at the chat. Is it a man cave video studio? I mean, one could call it that. One could definitely call it a man cave video studio for a nerdy HVACR service technician. For sure. Yes, you could call it that. So, but there's still a lot of mystery in that, right? Let's see. Aaron says, lately I've found a struggle with electrical wiring and understanding control wiring. Any books, videos, words of encouragement for you? Ooh, that's a good question. Do me a favor and shoot me an email, Aaron, if you don't mind. HVACRvideos@gmail.com. I'll have to try to think about that. Anybody that's in the chat that has any encouragement or any advice for Aaron, do me a favor and post some links. As far as controls go, I'll have to think about that one for a minute. You know, with me, I always struggled with electrical. I always struggled with schematics. And one thing I will say that is when I was in trade school, I'd be going through trade school and the teacher would be talking about something, and it would just like, I would hear it, but I wouldn't understand it, right? And I'm second generation, so I grew up working for my father. At the time, I was, you know, when I first officially started working in the trade full time, which would have been in 2002. So whatever that math is, that's how long I've been doing this officially full time. But I'm second generation, meaning that I've been working with my dad since I was a little kid, okay? Whenever school got out, my parents would do the whole divorce swap thing. So my dad would drive out to Orange County, Southern in California, would pick me up from my mom's house, and then on his way home, we'd probably run a call or two. And, you know, I remember being on his bucket, staring at things, and he would tell me things. And then other technicians, senior people at the company that worked for my dad at the time would try to explain things to me, and nothing quite clicked, right? But I remembered things. That's something that my brain does. Like, it stores data even if it doesn't understand it, right? So it's just sitting there in the back of my head. It's sitting there over here. Then I go to school and the teacher's whoop, 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 telling me whatever. And it's just like, okay, it's going in here. And then just one day, click, it all just comes together. And it's like, oh, shoot, I understand that. I can remember the first aha moment was with defrost clocks, I can remember. And magnetic motor starters, right? you know, that stuff just confused the heck out of me. And actually the old school mag starters, like the furnace ones or GE ones, they scared me because they were loud and they buzzed. Hold on, I think I might have it here. Yeah. These guys right here, man, these things used to scare me because they'd be in an electrical panel and there's no schematic on them, and they would just bzzz, and then you just like, am I going to get electrocuted if I even get close to that? Sorry for the vertical format. You know, these things scared the heck out of me. But then once they clicked, right, I'd have school telling me, my dad telling me, the senior mechanic telling me, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is just a contactor coil with an overload and a couple of normally open and normally closed contacts. That's all this is, right? So do I have advice on how to break things down and how to make electrical easier? I don't, right? Because everybody learns differently. But what I am going to say is don't overcomplicate it. This is an overrated contactor coil, right? And now, yes, it does have an overload portion, but if you break it down, there's literally a contactor coil that has a coil. Right here's one side of it, and then right here is the other side. And if you put the correct power to that, this guy pulls in, right? And then depending on how you wire it, then some wires might come down through the bottom right here and go through a set of normally open contacts that if this overload opens, it might interrupt this contactor from pulling in. So the reason why I'm saying that is that sometimes things can seem so complicated, but all you got to do is remember to take a step back, take a breather, and think about it in the simplest form, right? So understanding how a motor starter works, well, it's a contactor that has an overload in it, and the overload controls the contactor via normally open and normally closed contacts. And that's all it is. And it creates a holding circuit that either holds the circuit open, you know, or depending on how you wire it, it might energize lights. You know, there's all kinds of stuff, but breaking it down to the simplest form, that it's just a contactor. We know that a contactor, when voltage is applied, electromagnetic forces, you know, pull it in and makes connection across it, right? So, you know, is there more to this? Sure. But breaking it down to the fundamentals, that it's just a contactor with an overload, that makes, for me, that makes my brain easier. So when it comes to schematics and controls, you know, there's a reason why, you know, you start with the fundamentals, right? And you start with the basics. You know, if you're talking about controls, now I'm not a controls technician, I'm not a genius with that, but all you're doing is giving a command. And when that command happens, logic tells it that this or this is going to happen. So you just need to understand the basic architecture of what's going on in there, you know, breaking it down to the simplest form, and then, you know, going further. Now, again, shoot me an email. Maybe we could talk some more and I could break some things down. I know I didn't answer your question completely. Schematics, same thing. For me, it didn't make sense, but then I had a teacher show me a schematic, and then I saw something one time, and in the most simplest form, they were using water, right? And the switches were valves, right? And so when you close the valve, the water didn't flow through. And when you close this, or, you know, when you open the valve, the water didn't flow through. But then when you closed it, the water flowed through the circuit, and then it went through. Like, that helped to break things down as far as basic schematics. Now, I don't know if you were asking me basics or whatever. My brain works like very simply, right? And, you know, this kind of leads into one of the questions that someone had asked me in my videos, and I'm going to pull it up right here. And let's see, where's it at? It says, oh, well, first off, they're reassuring me that they still like my videos. Hold on just a second. Let's see if I can find this one. Let me see. I'm trying to find this comment real quick. And then, because you guys, some of these comments are hilarious. Like, they're passive aggressive, like digs at me. And it's like, I'm not trying to tell anybody I'm a genius. I'm just a normal person in here, right? So let me see if I can find this one. Yeah, I'm not going to find it, but I'll look at what I have right here. So this person says, I still like your videos, but I'm curious. Who are you trying to make these videos for? If you're explaining to people like they don't know how to reset a circuit breaker, if a person watching this video does not know basic stuff like resetting a circuit breaker, they're not qualified to work on a refrigeration. You should not be training them over YouTube videos. I mean, okay, Cool story, bro. That's your prerogative. But I talk in these videos to myself before I understood how things worked. I was brought up a little bit differently. Okay. I was brought up old school. I wasn't taught how to do everything. Right. And I love my dad to death, but my dad, you know, he didn't know how to do everything, and he did the best. And he taught me amazing things. Right. He taught me compassion. He taught me troubleshooting logic, but he didn't know everything either. Right. And so I try to talk to myself as if I was an apprentice. Right. And I remember in my head, I didn't understand how this stuff works. I didn't understand how a circuit breaker worked. Right. I didn't understand, you know, when a circuit breaker trips, you can't turn it back on. Why not? Because you have to turn it off before you can try to turn it on again. That's just how a circuit breaker works. That's how you reset it. Right. So I don't know what this exact comment that this person was criticizing me on for explaining to someone about how a circuit breaker works. I can only assume one of two things. Either if it was on a refrigeration rack, you know, I might have been drilling into someone's head on a rack that you don't reset the main while all the, you know, the other circuit breakers are still on. You shut off all the circuit breakers, you turn on the main, then you turn on each circuit breaker one at a time to control the peak load going, you know, to, you know, being put on the panel. Essentially, it could have been that I was talking about, or it could have been how to physically reset a circuit breaker. But I don't know. But, you know, you don't have to watch these videos if you don't like them. Now, I am not a DIY channel. I'm not against DIY stuff. I make videos for myself, right? I'm talking to myself as if I didn't know anything. I make videos for my own service technicians, and I make videos for people like me that think how my brain works. That's who I make videos for, okay? Other than that, I mean, everybody else that gets benefits from these videos, that's a bonus. But realistically, I'm trying to help someone who maybe is just like me that didn't understand everything coming up in the trade or doesn't understand everything, you know? All right. Let me see, reading through here. Electrical side of things is completely different versus refrigeration itself. Oh yeah, hands down. Yeah, definitely is. Let's see, it says this stream is odd. It's showing responses to comments that aren't shown. Yeah, I don't know. It might be because there's multiple Facebooks. I don't know. You know, I don't know, Jason. Jason's seeing things in a different format because you're a moderator too, Jason. So I don't know. It might be different. Who knows, man? All right. Let's see. Reefer Insight says he's trying to make HVACR videos just to provide entertainment. Hey, man, whatever floats your boat. That's the cool thing about the internet. Anybody can do anything they want, right? I mean, within reason, right? Some people are in prison for it. So, but you know, let's see. Aaron says you'll wait to chat with me at the symposium. All right, Aaron, but I do have to say I'm not going to be at the symposium this year, so I apologize very much. I will be at AHR this year, but unfortunately, the AHR and the symposium are too close together, and the AHR is going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada. The symposium is going to be in the Orlando area, and I'm not going to be able to make the trip that close together, especially with this project I have going on this year. So I typically make it to the symposium when AHR is there. But it's really difficult for me to make it when, you know, they're so close together and they're across the country. So it's within a couple weeks of each other. It's hard for me to take 4 days off for the symposium, then go to work for 4 days, then go to HR for, you know, 5 days or whatever it is. I'm struggling because, you know, I'm, you know, still working every day within the business and, you know, making videos. It's difficult. So it's hard for me to get all that time off. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. Looks like maybe entering the field of HVAC in Ontario. Right on. Where can you learn to work? Where can I learn? You work at the UCSF hospital, 4 years HVAC. How can you expand your HVAC knowledge? You've hit a wall. Oh man, the internet is your gateway to that, right? First and foremost, you have training classes everywhere, all over the place. You have the opportunity to jump into training classes, but you also have the internet. You have so many great people out there making content, training materials. It depends. Are you wanting to get into more residential style stuff? Tim DeStasio does a great job on the internet. Ty Brannaman does a great job breaking down fundamentals all the way to some pretty advanced topics. Craig Migliaccio from AC Service Tech does a great job breaking down residential and light commercial kind of topics. Advanced Refrigeration podcast gets super deep in the advanced refrigeration side. Holden Schamberger does a great job in the industrial HVAC side. We got Jason Johnson here in the chat who does a great job and kind of is dabbling in the commercial HVAC content creation stuff with chillers and stuff. So there's so many different people out there, right? So anybody that wants more ideas on who to follow, where to follow, just go to YouTube, look up HVACR, start scrolling through. Feel free to shoot me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Those are not the only people. Those are the only people that I thought of right off the tip of my tongue. But there's a lot of other great people out there that are doing a great job to help the industry. You have organizations like NCI, National Comfort Institute, where my really good friend Adam Muffich works. He's a regional trainer for them and travels around the country doing training classes on all different sorts of subjects. Like there's so much information out there. It's like information overload, right? So feel free to shoot me an email and we can talk more. Any of you that want to have any more ideas or information about other content creators and stuff. I just try to put out what I think would work for me back when I was starting and still to this day when I see cool stuff out in the field. Okay. So, and with this new project I'm working on, it's kind of going to unlock some ideas and some thoughts that have been in my head forever. Like, man, I wish I could do this. And man, I wish I could try this. And man, I wish I could film this. Well, I'm going to be able to do that because it's going to be mine. So let's see, reading through the chat, not familiar with, okay, cool. So, hey, this is a really cool thing too. And I'm looking for a question really quick. Where do I see a question? Okay, let's see this. Can I rewrap pipe on a Scotsman flaker ice machine evaporator? The evaporator is leaking. You have removed the insulation and found the leak. Crazy thought. Can you wrap the evaporator with new copper? I don't think you can. I think that those things, the copper that's wrapped around the evaporator is usually soldered to that evaporator, which is usually like a stainless steel evaporator in a certain way. And it's usually not completely round copper. It's slightly flattened out for better heat transfer. And then it's wrapped. So your best bet, if you have an evaporator barrel that is leaking on a Scotsman flaker, to replace the barrel itself, unless it's something that you can very easily braze. So I would highly suggest just replacing the barrel. Oh, excuse me. Coffee or tea's kicking in and wearing me out. It was kind of wound up, and so I love this time of year because it's time to drink some tea. Got my HVAC overtime cup over here too. All right, JJ Walker says, great advice. You're fresh in the field out of school, and schematic and electrical are also sometimes his weak points, but thorough self-research and messaging with the equipment in your own house helps. Yeah, that's a great idea. Without breaking equipment in your own house, you can certainly go home, stare at your own stuff, kind of tinker with it, play with it. Obviously, your wife or your spouse or your significant other probably isn't going to be the happiest person if you make it not work and then you can't figure it out. So be cautious about that. But having your own stuff at home is great to be able to play with it for sure. So how far am I from Brea, California? CoolSys has a training facility out there that has entire grocery store trainers. Maybe I could do some videos with them. Reefer Insight. Interestingly enough, I have some footage from the CoolSys Training Center in Brea because when my buddy Brett Wetzel worked for CoolSys, he was the bigwig with the training department. I went out there and toured their lab when Brett was building it out initially, and but the footage just didn't turn out too good. But it's a very impressive facility to say the least. Yeah, they have full-on racks in there, multiple racks. They have cases, they have all sorts of equipment and basic training stuff, from introductory stuff to super advanced controls training. Yeah, it's a very impressive facility to say the least. So yeah, I have some footage, but the audio and the video just didn't turn out like I would have liked it. So I couldn't post it, unfortunately. So do I pay attention to vapor saturation, and does it different refrigerants? Vapor saturation temperature, saturation temperatures in general, whether it's liquid saturation or vapor saturation, are the best ways to understand refrigerants and the processes that are happening within the system. See, here's the thing. When I was coming up in the trade, there was a lot of R12 equipment that was being phased out. There was a lot of alternative refrigerants that were drop-in replacements for R12. And then we had 404 just coming into the industry that was replacing 502. So basically 502 was low temp, R12 was medium temp, and R22 was high temp, right? And then they were phasing out all those different ones, right? And so they had a whole bunch of different, flavors of refrigerant that were replacing all those different ones. And it got really confusing because I remember coming up with R22, it was like, okay, your pressures are this and this at this point. This temperature, your pressure is this, right? But then you start adding in all these different flavors of refrigerants, and these are pressure temperature charts. And each one of those colors on the pressure temperature chart, from green to gray to blue to orange to, those are all different refrigerants all the way over, from refrigeration to air conditioning to natural refrigerants, CO2, isobutane, R290, propane, all that different stuff. They're all different refrigerants, and they all run different pressures. And so the cool thing is we never had to do this, but, unfortunately I wasn't quite brought up the right way. And so we didn't know, right? Things were different. And so we would focus on pressures, but I really don't use pressures as much because I start focusing on saturation temperatures. Now there's times to use pressures when you're looking at pressure controls, different things like that, cut in and cut out of certain valves. You might want to know the pressure, but the saturation temperatures really help you to understand a lot more. And you can remove this unneeded information in your head about what pressure something should be when you start focusing on the temperatures and the saturation temperatures. So if and you take a temperature pressure chart, right? We used to have them in our pockets as little paper things, like bifold papers you would pull out and find the pressure and find the temperature. Now you can do it all on your phone, right? You got pressure temperature charts, and you can just ask the Google and you can find out anything. But once I started paying attention to the temperatures of the refrigerant, I started to realize I don't need to remember the pressure of 404 at this temperature, or 502 at that temperature, or R290 at this temperature. I just know that on, how a system was designed, depending if it's a basic walk-in cooler, you're going to have approximately, a 10-degree evaporator TD, which is the temperature difference between the return air temp and the saturated refrigerant temperature. And then, you could, backwards calculate everything by looking at the saturation temperature of the refrigerant. You could, so it just became so much easier when I stopped focusing on pressures and started focusing on temperatures. Okay. So yes, I use saturated temperatures all the time. Technicians that work with me call me and they're like, yeah, this air conditioner is not working right. And it's like, all right, cool. Start giving me the numbers, right? What's the indoor temperature? What's the outdoor temperature? What's the liquid saturation? What's the suction saturation? What's your delta T across your evaporator? What's the TD across the condenser? And all that stuff starts to click in my head. And then boom, we can come up with a diagnosis. Oh, you're not feeding right, or you're overfeeding, or who knows, right? So saturation temperatures are key. And it'll make your life so much easier once you start paying attention to saturation temperatures and stop focusing on pressures when you're trying to diagnose systems. So you've got a question. Home warranty tech can only do so much. Right on. What's my thoughts on remanufactured compressors, ARCO branded? Any extra tips if you're familiar with that topic? Thanks for the Q&As. Okay, so nothing wrong with being a home warranty tech, okay? Everybody's learning, even I'm learning. I don't know everything. Okay, so here's something you need to understand. You have a remanufactured compressor. Home warranty companies don't want to pay for brand new compressors. It's sad, to be honest with you, because homeowners think they're buying a home warranty. So that means that if something breaks, they're going to fix it, right? Could you imagine if you have a brand new, $90,000 Chevy truck, right? And the truck breaks within 3 years, and you take it to the dealership and they want to put a, used parts in it, right? Now, I understand there is manufacturer approved remanufactured components, right? So that's something different, but can you imagine if they wanted to put used parts in it, right? So you have remanufactured compressors, and I'm not saying that ARCO makes bad compressors, okay? Or they remanufacture. So they cut them open and repair what's broken. But the thing is how do you know if it's working right? The only way that I would feel super confident with a remanufactured compressor is if I could see the original manufacturer's information for that compressor. Now, I've never bought an ARCO remanufactured scroll compressor, so I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, do they list the original Copeland model number on that compressor? Or do they list their new model number. And the reason why I ask is because if you did have a remanufactured compressor, if it was a Copeland, then in theory, you could go to the Copeland mobile app and you could look at the data and you could see if that compressor is working properly via the old model number. Do you understand where I'm going with this? And the same thing goes for Danfoss and all these different other brands. So if you're going to get a remanufactured compressor, the only way that it completely makes sense to me is if you know the original equipment manufacturer's nomenclature, right, the model number, so that way you could go to the original equipment manufacturer to verify whether or not that compressor is working properly. Because I would find it completely hard to believe that Arco, who remanufactures the compressors, and again, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I find it completely hard to believe that they have their own Copeland mobile version that really breaks down how these compressors work, what the operating envelopes are. And maybe they do. Maybe I'm completely ignorant to it because I really don't know much about them. But that's the only comfortable way that I would want to install that stuff, okay? If you have more questions about that, we can talk some more. Feel free to shoot me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Also, there was, hold on just a second. I didn't address this because this happened before the stream started. Freon Leon had given me a super chat in the very beginning before the stream started. Thank you very much, my friend. I really did want to publicly acknowledge that, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you, bud. All right, so let's go back down to the bottom. Have I messed with Interplay Learning at all? It's expensive, but a great learning tool. Some companies offer it to employees for free. Okay, so interestingly enough, Interplay Learning seems like a really awesome piece of tech. Okay, what it does is it incorporates VR kind of augmented. It's more or less VR, right? It puts a video in front of you. You put on a VR headset and you get to kind of with controllers, you go around as a new technician that's in school and you get to basically see an air conditioner. It doesn't work for me. I know it works for some people and I think it's an amazing tool. I get motion sickness, so I can't put on VR headsets. So it's hard for me to comment on that stuff just simply because I can't put on VR stuff. Now, I will say that I've seen some videos in the early days. I haven't seen anything from Interplay recently, but in the early days, it looked like you were playing Roblox to me. So not really my style. But again, maybe it's hands down amazing now, and it's, God's gift to HVACR. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, but I don't have much else to say about it. I get motion sickness, so I can't really try it out. So would I be willing to do a class on VRF systems and components, sensors, valves, etc. with Linux? I don't know anything about VRF or VRV systems. I would highly suggest that you look at some of the other commercial people, or I'm going to tell you that I have a pretty good fake internet friend named Roman Baugh, who does amazing stuff. And also with another gentleman, Donald Balsay, forgive me if I'm butchering his name, but they have a VRV podcast that they do. So both of them have amazing information out there on the internet. There's also some VRF, VRV Facebook groups that are no nonsense groups. Roman and Donald, I believe, have one. I believe between the two of them, that is also information. And then also Jason Johnson may or may not be able to direct you in some directions. I don't know if you get into VRF stuff, Jason, or if you're just dealing with the chiller stuff. I think you're just doing chillers. But again, any of these people that I mentioned, if you don't know how to pronounce their names or anything like that, just shoot me an email and I'm sure I'll get back to you at some point and get you some information, okay? Again, sorry, there's a lot of stuff going by right now if I'm not getting to your comments or your questions. Have I ever done residential commercial boiler work before? You have a little bit of experience working with Raypak and Lear boilers, and it seems like a pretty good aspect of the HVAC industry. No, I have not done residential boiler work. I live in Southern California. We don't know what cold is. So, and within what I do with my normal HVACR service company, we are strictly HVACR and refrigeration, but we don't really get into the hydronics side of things. Okay. So we don't really deal with water heating or anything like that. I just edge my way into gas heating and heat pumps, and that's about it. So not the person to talk to about that, but there's lots of great training resources out there. So it's going to be great for you, dude. There's tons of stuff. Let's see. Mechanical Environment says Roman Baugh has been making great VRF content. And again, I can't remember what the final thing was, Mechanical. Is that you, Matt? or is that Megan? I think you said that Megan was going to come under her name and Matt was going to be under mechanical environments, I think. So forgive me if I don't respond to Matt or Megan, because I don't want to call you the wrong person. So apologies on that. And I'll try to watch for when it comes up. Let's see. Reading through the chat, reading through here. Someone says Matt, and so I'm assuming that's Matt, possibly. But reading through the chat here. And okay, all right, I'm going to get to a couple more things that I have on my list here real quick. So, okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to say this, that unfortunately I have to put short form content out there. I don't like short form content. It's annoying and it lacks context, okay? But social media is being dumb and everybody's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And in order to bring attention to my long form videos where I can give plenty of context, I have to do the short form content. Okay, so that's why you see shorts popping up on all the different platforms. And while I agree, I like watching shorts for like comedy or whatever, technical shorts, like there's no time to give context, right? So everybody wants to be a armchair critic because I put out a short about a drain trap. Ironically, why in the heck, when I put a short talking about how I like to pipe my P traps on HVAC units, did that get over 200,000 views? That's ridiculously stupid that it got that many views. Like, it really is. And then the long form video where I give context and explain the maintenance and all this different stuff gets 20,000 views. Like, people's attention spans are so different. It's kind of crazy. Anyways, whatever. Going off on a tangent as usual with that, right? But let's go in here. So why not let the drain traps drain strictly on the roof? My gosh, that must be the most common question I get amongst everything in here. Okay, so mechanical environments is saying it's Matt and Megan, but normally Megan's using her account and Matt's using the mechanical environments. I'm trying to remember that. It's in my head. I still kind of get confused sometimes, but okay, cool. So I'm going to stick to calling you Matt. And then when I see Megan's name, then we're good with that. And I'll address Megan that way. Okay, cool. Sorry, tangent again. Look at distracted puppies. All right. So why in the heck do I not drain traps directly on the roof membrane? Why am I running them down the drain, which is then being piped into the sewer? It's just something that we do here in California. Depending on the municipality that you're in, there's actually going to be certain codes within certain areas, and it changes from city to city depending on how close you are to the coast. We don't want condensate water creating slip hazards, so they don't want it running across parking lots. They don't want it going onto the roof typically, because a lot of the times we don't get rain here very often. So we have primary and secondary roof drains, and a lot of the times the customers don't get onto the roof to clean the primary drains. So the secondaries are usually a little bit higher than the primary. The primary goes into the sewer. The secondary usually goes down the gutter, then goes out into the street. The city and local municipalities don't want to see water running across the street. On the flip side, in certain areas, they don't want condensate water running into storm drains. They want it going to the sewer, so that way it can be processed and cleaned, because the storm drains go directly to the ocean. Okay, so like, I don't think I've ever seen a building where from the get-go condensate is just piped onto the roof and then it's just drained off. That's just not how we do things here. I realize in Midwestern states, Eastern states, you guys just drain it onto the roof. I mean, that's just how it goes. That's just our local codes. And so majority of the time, everything is piped to the sewer, and that's just how it goes. That is the most common question I get when I put stuff out there about drains. All right, where's the air gap in my drains? When you see a condensate drain coming out of an air conditioning unit, then it's going below the roof deck. How come there's not an air gap from the air conditioner to the, because why would they put an air gap there? When if they're piping it downstairs, they put an air gap where it goes into a floor sink or something like that. An air gap being a place so that way the drain doesn't drain directly into the sewer. Hence, if we had a backup, then sewage could, in theory, back up into the HVAC unit, or sewage gases could make their way up into the HVAC unit. So we have air gaps, okay? But yeah, air gaps are always downstairs. When you see my roof drains, that's just the roof. You know, it is what it is. I don't understand what the infatuation with the drains. Again, it's just so interesting to me how people are just obsessed about why the drains are piped below the roof deck. I don't know. That's just how they are. All right. All right. Let's read through here. What belt do I prefer, cogged or not cogged, for a unit that starts and stops all the time versus a unit that runs continuously? I haven't put a lot of thought into a unit that starts and stops all the time. My equipment typically runs continuously. When you turn it on in the morning, it runs till late in the night and then it turns off. When you're dealing with continuous runtime, in my personal humble opinion, cogged belts are the best because they don't get as hot. There's less surface area. They have more flexibility. And in my experience, they just last longer. Okay. So I prefer to go with cogged belts, but it all depends on the customer's budget and what they want to do. There's times that I can't get cogged belts or AX belts or BX belts, and I have to go with a regular one. It is what it is. But with, if I have my choice, I tend to get the cogged belts. Reading through a few more questions here. How do I go about suggesting to a customer the components be replaced simply because they test out of spec without sounding like a greasy salesman? Man, at first I was like, okay, that's a silly question, but it's actually not. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad characters in this industry, especially in the commission-based companies. I'm not saying that all commission-based technicians are bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of bad commission-based technicians, okay? And when you have commission-based or you get spiffs for selling materials and whatever, it can lead to some people doing some bad things, okay? Recommending to customers to sell things that they don't need, okay? One of the biggest complaints from a customer when I took over a maintenance contract from a giant nationwide company is that every time they come out to do a maintenance, every contactor on all of our ACs need to be replaced. Well, the way that I respond to a customer in that situation is, well, I don't know what they're telling you, but sometimes contactors do need to be replaced. Now, whether or not they all need to be replaced, I don't know. So some customers simply don't want to hear things, right? So how do I tell a customer that a capacitor is testing out of spec, but it's working right now? How do I convince them to replace it? Honestly, they just need to learn. That's plain and simply the easiest way. If they're paying me to go out there and do a routine maintenance, they better not get upset with me when I come up with a big long list of things that need to be replaced, because that's what a routine maintenance is for. I'm there to tell you when the equipment is starting to become a problem. So typically what I'll say is I'll come up with a big long list of here's some things. They're currently working, but the capacitor is not testing correctly. So as it warms up outside, it's not going to happen more than likely right now, but right when it warms up outside and the voltages drop, because here in Southern California, we have some really dirty power. When it gets hot, the voltage drops, right? We might see as low as 192 volts, 186 volts. I've seen it all, right? As soon as it gets hot in certain areas and the demand goes high, man, they have a hard time keeping up with the demand. And the capacitors really start to affect the operation of those motors when they're testing bad. So honestly, the best way is for them to learn. I make all these recommendations throughout the year and they don't take them. I document them and they say, yeah, we're just going to wait because it's working. No problem. Cool. Each time I go back, hey, your capacitor is going bad. And then in the middle of the summer, the motor goes bad. And then I tell them, pretty good odds that motor wouldn't have burnt up if we would have just changed the capacitor and it would have been running in the way it was, overheating, all those different things. Probably could have saved you some money if you would have changed that $19 capacitor when it needed to be replaced, right? Thank you very much for that super chat. It says, Gear, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm not going to butcher it. I apologize. But it says, hey, man, I have a question. I have a hair mini split and I have an issue in the winter. It always says it's missing refrigerant. Oh, so it's low refrigerant air, but you changed it multiple times. What can it be? Okay, so there's a lot of different things that could cause your unit to think that it's low on refrigerant if it's not low on refrigerant. If you're talking about a mini split, sometimes it can be sensors. Sometimes it might be low on refrigerant. Sometimes there might be something wrong with the expansion valve, okay, the metering device. That could be part of the problem too. There's so many different variables in mini splits because they typically have variable refrigerant flow of some sort, variable speed motors that might speed up and slow down. If a motor's not running the right speed, if the evaporator is dirty, if the condenser is dirty, all those things can make a mini split think that it's low on refrigerant. If the filter's dirty, it could think that. So there's a variety of problems there. Now, here in the States, I'll be honest with you, If you have small mini splits like that, majority of the time, they're really not worth a lot of repairs. They really aren't. Now, depending on the costs and different things, you might want to pay a technician to come out and dig into it. But as far as like what the solution is going to be, I really don't know, because I don't really work on that brand a lot. But I would highly suggest that you go online into some online forums and you start researching that particular mini split with the particular error code and see what's up. Now, it could also have a simple refrigerant leak, okay? Because mini splits here in the United States, he's in Europe of some sort, right? I'm assuming so. But here in the United States, mini splits, a good majority of the time, have mechanical fittings that connect them, flare nuts. And a lot of the times, the flare nuts don't get tightened properly. Or some other things that can happen is, depending on the line set length, the refrigerant line length, you might have to add extra refrigerant for the refrigerant line length. So just because on the side of the unit, it says that it takes 1 pound and 10 ounces, well, that doesn't mean that that's the right amount of refrigerant for the whole system, because if the line set length is beyond whatever the manufacturer specs, you know, you might have to add extra refrigerant for extra foot of line set length. Okay, so there's a lot of different variables that go into that. You could have a simple refrigerant leak because of bad mechanical fittings. You could have a refrigerant leak because of corrosion. You could have bad sensors, expansion valve problems. There could be so many different things. It's really hard to tell you the exact same thing or the exact issue without being there in front of it. But I would highly suggest to go onto some online forums, look at the error code that you're getting, and kind of start there. Hope that helps. You can feel free to shoot me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com if you want to talk any more about it, okay? What are my thoughts on soft starters for residential Phoenix area? So we're hot like we are in Southern California. Phoenix gets about 50 more days a year of above 100-degree temperature than we do, okay? We probably get, you know, a good 35 to 40 days a year where we're above 100 degrees maybe in my area. You guys get a few more. But you do have the very similar dry heat. You have very similar high temperature conditions, and you also get the monsoonal moisture that we get in the summertime. But I think you guys get it a little bit longer in the Phoenix area. What are my thoughts on soft starters? I mean, if it's a true soft starter and, you know, the compressor is set up to accept it, I mean, they're good for you know, reducing the inrush current of equipment. They definitely can help with that. So I don't necessarily have anything bad to say about them as long as they're designed and sized right. Now, there's some fake soft starters out there too that aren't true soft starters. So just be cautious about that and do your research. Again, don't really know the specifics on the one you're dealing with, so I don't want to get too deep into this one. Someone is asking me, because I've been talking a while about doing a big investment into my channel, and something cool's coming, you know, for me. I guess it's going to be really cool for me, whether or not you guys like it. You're along for the ride kind of thing, right? But a lot of people have been trying to guess what it is. I'm not going to confirm what it is, but I will tell you some things that it's not. I'm not building a training center, okay, yet. Maybe someday, 20 years from now, you know, that'd be really awesome, but not right now. The next thing is my big surprise that I'm going to hire a video editor. Man, that would be so awesome if I hired a video editor. It truly would. But unfortunately for me, it's so difficult to find a video editor because I make technical videos and I make technical mistakes all the time. And I catch those mistakes oftentimes, or I'll cut a clip and then re-record it when I know I just said something incorrectly. And for a non-technical HVACR person, they're not going to catch my mistakes. So my videos wouldn't even make sense to anybody. And I don't script my stuff. I just, off the top of my head, just start talking, right? So editors just don't work for what I do. I would love to, because my gosh, it would be awesome if I could just give someone footage and not have to worry about anything. Although I probably wouldn't be in the comments as much. Yeah, so anyways. All right, get to a couple more questions here, see what I'm missing. Let's see, Darwin. Hey, I'm a supermarket tech here in New York. You're having a problem with a freezer box freezing up the coils. The wild thing is there are 3 blowers and it's iced up on all 3 coils in the same pattern. Well, okay, so first off, I don't deal with supermarket stuff very much, but I will say that ice is, you can usually look at ice and you can start to learn things from it. So depending on what type of defrost you have, I'm going to ask you whether or not the termination is happening at the right time. Is the defrost being turned off too soon? Is there a sensor bad? Are the evaporator fan motors, I know this sounds silly, but are they blowing the air in the right direction, the right way through the coil? obviously some red flags. Are doors being left open? Do we have door alarms? What is going on with that situation? Are the fans dropping down to low speed? You know, there's a lot of energy efficiency stuff. And again, you're dealing with supermarkets, so I'm assuming you're working with more complex stuff, but sometimes it's smart to step back to the basics and think about it. A lot of the times I'll tell my technicians and my apprentices, hey, if you're struggling with something, majority of the time you're doing something wrong. And that's not a dig at anybody. It's just a stop, think about it, reevaluate, go to the fundamentals. The box gets cold, refrigerant goes through the evaporator, air moves across, moves heat. If it doesn't move enough heat, ice starts to freeze. Or if after so much time, you know, you have to put that system into defrost. Are all the coils defrosting at the same time? Are they conflicting? You know, there's a lot of different variables. So again, I don't necessarily have the answer to your question, but I would investigate defrost type, defrost time, how long it's defrosting for, termination temperature, what method it's using to terminate. Are these center mount coils that have 2 evaps with the fans that suck air in and blow air out? Or are they industrial style medium profile coils that have, you know, 1 horsepower to 2 horsepower blower motors on them that are blowing across the entire industrial thing, you know? When it came to the energy efficiency changes, a lot of manufacturers had to go to 2-speed evaporator fan motors. And here's what I don't understand. When those evaporators would go into defrost, they would go to low speed, which makes absolutely no sense for medium temperature coils. Now, I understand you said freezer, but I'm just telling a story. So medium temperature coils, when they go into defrost, off-cycle defrost, if it's not hot gas or not electric, you know, they just turn off the refrigeration cycle and they just move the air across. So a lot of manufacturers started putting in 2-speed evaporator fan motors. But defrost would go to low speed because low speed is usually energized whenever there's no call for cooling. High speed is usually energized when there's a call for cooling. But a lot of them, when it would go into defrost, it would default to low speed, and that wouldn't be enough movement and heat transfer across the coil on off-cycle defrost to melt all the ice on the evaporators. So the reason why I said that when you were asking about a freezer is because sometimes you got to stop and think about problems like that. Sometimes it's a manufacturing problem. You know, sometimes I have not had really good luck in high volume walk-ins with demand defrost. I just don't have very good luck with it. And time defrost tends to work out better for me. So you can get into some great manufacturers of equipment, Heatcraft, Russell, KE2, they all have demand defrost where it uses algorithms and logic to say, hey, we don't need a defrost. We can save money because let's be honest, defrosts are an energy hog a lot of the times, right? Sometimes we defrost equipment when we don't need to. So, you know, sometimes there's problems with high volume equipment, meaning customers are in and out, in and out, in and out. Demand defrost sometimes doesn't work for those ones. So, you know, I put it back to time defrost. So those are all different things. And again, like I've said to everybody else, if I didn't answer enough or you have any more questions, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. All right. Let's see. Mike B from HVACR says, pull the red wire, hate low speed for the fans. Yeah, good majority of the time. What I'll typically do if a customer buys their own equipment or I sell them new equipment and it has 2-speed, if it's going to be a problem from the get-go, I'll disable the 2-speed, but most of the time I'll give them a chance or two. If we start to have weird freeze-ups, then we'll pull the red wire, tape it off, and go from there. Another thing I'll tell you, when you are removing the low speed from a medium temperature or a low temperature freezer or cooler, I'm going to tell you a little trick. There's a relay on the side of the evaporator where the electrical section is, and there's a red wire on that relay. If you pull that red wire, then you disconnect the low speed relay, okay? But what you don't do is you don't disconnect the interconnected red wire from each motor. 3, 4, 5 motors, they all have a red wire and they're daisy chained together, right? So that way, if that low speed relay energizes because the system goes on low speed or de-energizes, it sends that voltage through that red wire, right? And it daisy chains to every motor. If you're going to disconnect low speed, I'd highly suggest you disconnect it from every motor. And I have it on video. I don't know what video to show you, but I have run into this problem where internally the motors will short. One motor will be bad, but it'll internally short. And because those red wires are daisy chained, all the motors will go to low speed. And you'll be like, wait, every motor's bad? And then it's like, wait a minute. So then you start isolating them and individually connecting them. And then it's like, oh, one motor's bad. It's internally shorted and it's sending voltage to all the rest of the motors, and they're all slowing down because of it. That was an interesting find when I found it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. I'm glad I could film this. So that's another interesting tidbit to think about when it comes to those low speed fans. Do I think I'll eventually get out of the field? I don't know if I could ever truly be out of the field. I mean, I would love to get into some sort of like real training kind of thing, maybe even someday working for a manufacturer. But here's my problem with that. I'm not politically correct. I'm blue collar. I'm, knuckle busting, right? I don't know if I could put on a polo shirt and go to work for someone and be prim and proper all the time. I don't know. So I think that makes it very difficult for me to go work for anybody in like a training center, because I'm truly blue collar. I really am. And, I'm totally different. Like what you see on my channel is very censored, and but it's also like I get imposter syndrome, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like I feel like a fraud sometimes because I'm so proper and prim on this channel. And if you go listen to the HVAC Overtime channel, Friday nights, I do a show with my friends on HVAC Overtime, and work permitting, of course. And yeah, I'm a little bit different on that channel. So yeah, I don't know. I really like working on things though. I like helping people and solving problems. So at a minimum, I would always be doing some sort of hands-on training or something like that. Let's see, reading through here. Cutting Threads, thank you very much for that super chat. That's very much appreciated. Again, this is really awesome, everybody that's doing these super chats. And I'm seeing the Instagram stuff. I'm going to comment on some of that here in just a minute. Any tips or advice for someone trying to get into the trade? Just graduated from trade school for HVACR with 8 certificates, including EPA 608, Universal, and A2L, but no one's willing to give you a shot. Here's the deal. First and foremost, trade schools, not all of them, but a good majority of them, fill your head with so much fluff and make you think that you're going to make all this money coming out of trade school and that you have all this experience. I'm not trying to make you feel like you're less than you are. I'm just trying to bring reality to you. When you graduate trade school, that is giving you fundamental education in this trade that does not give you experience, okay? Now, I realize you said you're having a hard time finding a job. You need to find a job with a company that's willing to give you a proper apprenticeship. You are going to be, majority of the time with one of these companies, you're going to be riding around with someone or shadowing them in your own van, following them around, and you're going to be learning, okay? So if you haven't already, the way to approach this is to go to a company and say, hey, I just graduated trade school. I really want to get into the trade and I'm willing to be an apprentice. I was wondering if you're willing to take on an apprentice, right? An apprentice should be getting paid. You're not working for free, okay? But you're not going to be making $35 an hour as an apprentice majority of the time. Maybe in some areas you might, but the cost of living in those areas is a lot higher. So the amount of money you're going to be paid basically is relative to other areas that are lower. You might be paying lower amounts, but depending on your area, if the union is strong, maybe get into the union or something like that. But you need to understand that you're going to start out as an apprentice and you're going to work your way up. Okay. I have 2 apprentices that are working for me. They've been working with me for almost a year now. We're coming on a year. Well, they're probably like 7 months at this point, right? So they're working their way through a year, and they're doing great. They both finished trade school and then came to work for us. And then they're working with us and learning every day, doing maintenances, getting their hands in a little different things, doing, some installs and different stuff like that. And every day is different. Okay. Another thing that I'm going to tell you, and don't take this the wrong way, but you need to reflect on yourself too. If you're having a hard time getting a job, I don't mean to make you think that there's something wrong with you, but you always need to self-reflect and think, is there something that I'm doing? Am I bringing in energy to this interview that is making them not want to hire me? Again, I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm just saying always self-reflect and think about that. Don't go into a depression because of it, but you will find a job. There is stuff out there. I bet you don't even realize how many HVACR jobs there are in your area. You don't necessarily have to work for a service company. There's hospitals, there's institutions, there's government agencies that are all looking for HVACR service technicians some of them willing to train. So you have a lot of opportunities. Your school that you went to, if they're not helping you find a job, depending on how much money you paid them for that school, they're doing you a disservice, okay? Because even the very inexpensive schools that are good schools, like community colleges, will help you with job placement, and they'll get you hired on with different people. So you need to reach out to your school. They should have a work placement program within the school wherever you went that should be able to help you too. So there's a lot of different opportunities. Again, like I told everybody else, feel free to shoot me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. And I hope that I've answered at least a few of your questions, my friend. All right, let's get to the Instagram stuff because there was a lot of comments coming in here. How did I come up with my logo? My cousin, who was just getting into graphic design, came up with the general idea of my logo. Now, the logo you see behind me is like one of the newer iterations of it. That was actually made by my buddy Will Speed. I believe he made me that out of some sort of, it's not 3D printing, but it's something else that he made that for me. I believe Will made that for me. I'm almost positive he did. But my logo in general, yeah, it is a snowflake logo. My cousin helped me with the initial design. Initially, it was just a crude snowflake, and then we rounded it out between the guy that does my merchandise, kind of cleaned it up, made it a little more refined, and we kind of came to the snowflake logo that we came out with. But yeah, it was just my cousin, and just she had nothing to do with HVAC. She was just getting into graphic design, and I just told her I'm an air conditioning tech. I work on hot stuff, cold stuff. And I just gave her some general ideas like, oh, a snowflake would be cool and all this different stuff. And then, she just kind of helped me, start the core idea, and then we built upon it and we came up with my snowflake logo. So that's how we came up with it. No real crazy science behind it. I didn't pay millions of dollars or anything like that. So reading through the chat, have I ever done residential? I already talked about that one. Boiler work. What are my thoughts on boiler work in general? Is it worth investing in the training tools and time to work on them? I definitely think so. Yeah, people need to be able to fix things. Here's the thing. Robots are taking over the world, okay? Whether it be automation and all these different things. But guess what? Robots break. We need to fix robots. I'm talking like a caveman, because the more you know how to fix, the more valuable you are, right? Boilers need to boil. I mean, hydronics, we need to cool and heat water to do the different certain manufacturing processes, right? And so someone has to be able to fix that. So the more knowledge you have, the more valuable you are, and the more versatile your career should be. So heck yeah, I think you should get involved in boilers and learn everything you can about them. So reading through here, do I try to stay in the Inland Empire, or do I venture out to other counties such as LA or the OC? I work in South Orange County a little bit, and I dabble just barely into LA County. But I try to stay, the way I describe it, as the greater Inland Empire is what I do. But yeah, I do go into Orange County a little bit. Always willing to take on new customers. I'm actually looking for a new customer right now because I need to add one more to the thing, because we let go of a bad customer a couple months ago, and then we lost a semi-bad customer about a year and a half ago, and we need to add a little bit more eggs to the basket, essentially, right? So yeah, I'm very thankful for the customers I have, but I am looking for some more and some new opportunities, to say the least. So reading through here, nobody gets mad when their auto mechanic does it. I'm assuming, Mike, I read that out of context, so I don't know for sure. Reading through what we got going on in here, because sometimes I'm looking at Instagram and it's hard to read, like, because I see a comment and I don't know the context. How much work have I done with CO2, and is it the future of refrigeration? Ryan Grant. I have done no work with CO2. I have lots of friends that are in the CO2 side of the industry. It is definitely one direction that the industry is going. Do I think everything's going to be CO2? No, I don't think the entire industry is going to CO2, but I definitely think that it's of serious value for anybody that is in refrigeration to understand CO2, to say the least. I need to start getting a better understanding of it, because it is a big part of this industry now. Basically the hippies have their way. Every refrigerant that we use today is going to be gone, and every refrigerant they're going to come out with tomorrow is going to be gone. And the natural refrigerants at this point are the more popular ones. Ironically, CO2 is bad for I remember a while back they were worried about CO2 because it like builds and doesn't allow crap. I don't know, man. They were complaining about CO2 in the atmosphere a long time ago, but yet we're using CO2 now, and it's a natural refrigerant. And you're allowed to vent it into the atmosphere. Hydrocarbon refrigerants, okay, they're byproducts of the oil and gas industry. So, I mean, they're trying to get rid of oil and gas and go all electric. So at what point are the hippies going to say that you can't be using natural refrigerants, R290 and isobutane anymore either? So, I mean, the cool thing about this industry is that if you embrace change, you're good. If you think that like, oh, I'm never going to use flammable refrigerants because, you know, I don't need to, I'm taking a stand. Well, you're going to not be working very much longer if you're not going to work with flammable refrigerants, because that's the trend. That's the way things are going. Natural refrigerants. So you've got the flammable refrigerants, the mildly flammable refrigerants, and you have CO2, and then you have ammonia, right? We've been branching away from ammonia. I bet you that starts coming back mainstream too, but even that is dangerous. So, you know, just it's an evolution in this industry, and you just have to be willing to accept change, to say the least. So have I ever worked on rack refrigeration? I have not worked on, I've worked on very minimal parallel racks. I've only done multiplex racks, one condensing unit, multiple evaporators, you know, different valves, maybe the occasional de-superheating valve, but I don't get into the high-end parallel racks. No, I don't. Not my thing, not really anything. I'd love to learn more about them, but I'm not super deep in them. I'm in more the light commercial multiplex racks, light commercial HVAC equipment. 35 tons and below is all I work on or have worked on. Currently, right now, I think the biggest unit I have is probably 25 tons. So I don't have any IntelliPacks anymore. I have had them in the past, but yeah, just not my thing. So, all right, going to get to a few more things. Is ProPress going to phase out brazing? No, ProPress is just, and when you say ProPress, press fittings are just another tool. There will always be brazing. There will always be press tools, and tomorrow they're going to come out with something new, some other sort of mechanical connection, okay? I will actually press my drain line fittings on all my ice machine installs all the time because it's super fast. When I'm with drain line fittings, I don't really have to worry about, for the most part, prepping the pipe, just jam them together and crimp them. But if I'm doing water connections for those ice machines, then there's a lot of prep that goes into those press fittings. If I'm doing press fittings for my refrigeration connections, there's a lot of prep that goes into it. And, you know, so, but I use them all. It depends on every different situation. They're all just different tools. Not one is going to replace the other. And no, you do not have to press the mildly flammable refrigerants. You can still braze them. Don't believe what your cousin's brother's cousin heard from the counter guy at the supply house, because he's lying to you, okay? Press is not replacing everything in the industry. You're still going to be brazing. You know, it's going to be there for a long time. What's my interview process and what do I look for? My interview process is going to change for every single person that I interview. It's a conversation that leads in whatever direction it leads when they sit down at the conference table. With us, it usually starts with a phone call, an email, some questions back and forth. Then we schedule an interview or two, usually schedule a ride along, maybe another interview. Depending on the technician and, you know, what questions need to ask. And like, you know, I typically have some questions that I'll ask, but another thing to understand too is that an interview is a two-way street. You're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you, okay? So don't ever be afraid to ask questions in an interview, and do not feel intimidated, because you are interviewing that company and they need you just as much as you need them, okay? Yeah, you may not be financially strapped and you need a job, but bottom line is, don't work for someone that doesn't fit, doesn't seem like a good fit, right? So ask the questions you need to ask. Make sure that you don't leave that interview until you get everything answered, and vice versa. Make sure they don't have any more questions for you. Be completely upfront. To me, an interview is a two-way street, and each one's going to be different, and it just depends on where the conversation leads and the vibe that I get from the person that sits down at the table across from me. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe everybody out there is going to send me all these emails and say I'm a horrible person for doing interviews that way, but that's just how I roll. Well, the supermarket industry adopting R290 with cooling towers and water source loops is just nuts, but CO2 seems future-proof. There's so many flavors of refrigerants, far too vague guidance. That's true. That's absolutely true. Let's see. This person says, I thought you couldn't have more than 16 ounces of R290. It all depends on where you're at and what you're working on. Did you know that R290 and propane has been used in the oil and gas industry for process cooling for a very long time? And a lot of the levels, they can use a lot bigger charge limit amounts, right, in the oil and gas. So there's certain areas that can get different approvals for different things. In the United States, supermarket cases that are open without doors, which you're not seeing as many of those anymore. I think the charge limitation was lifted all the way up to like 500 grams. It might already be higher by now. It just depends on the type of equipment and the mitigation things that you need to do to prevent explosions and different things like that. So every different size equipment is going to be different in the charge limitations. For the longest time, it was 150 grams, which was like 8.6 ounces or something like that. But yes, it was increased, and there's talks about increasing it even more. I'll be honest with you, I think that monoblock systems are a real answer, especially in the comfort cooling section. Can you imagine a residential system that has basically a mini chiller outside? You have a secondary fluid. The hydrocarbon refrigerants, R290 is outside. You got 3 pounds of R290 in a unit on the side of your house. And then you have a secondary fluid with some fancy PEX lines running through your house, hot water and cold water, glycol, whatever it may be. I think monoblock is the real way that we do things, chiller type systems. But, who knows? I don't know. I'm not a design person. So reading through, the only problem with CO2 is that there's not enough to go around. All the suppliers in your area are out of the tanks. And that is a huge thing. I hear that from everybody. We had a rat go down and we didn't have enough CO2, and we were scrambling, calling people. We sent a guy 8 hours to drive to go get, 3 tanks of CO2, and it still wasn't enough to charge the system. Yeah. Welcome to the politics of the HVACR industry. We set the rules, we set the standards, but we don't figure out how they're going to be implemented. That is the story of HVACR. That's just how it goes, right? Very interesting. All right. It is time to wrap this up. I really do appreciate everybody making it here. Thank you so very much. If I missed anything, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Got videos uploading. I should have a video this Wednesday uploading. Stay tuned, and maybe little teaser updates about my super top secret project I'm working on. I release little things here and here, but I'm not going to say it on the live stream, but I maybe said some stuff in the chat at the beginning of the stream. Like, I just say little things here and here just to because I told myself this was going to be a secret until it was done. And in all reality, the super top secret project I'm working on, I kind of mentioned, is like it is the biggest investment I've made into this channel. It's a sizable investment. It's a lot of money. And I've got a contractor doing some work, and we're pouring I gotta stop it. I keep spilling the beans, and we're doing a bunch of work. I got another contractor doing some stuff for me. And but in all reality, this project, I'm not going to set a completion date till hopefully February. We might be done sooner, but I'm building some stuff, and it's going to help to allow me to do some cool things with this channel. But I'm not going to change the service call videos. Those are still going to be there. Just adding a different flair to what I do on my channel. So stay tuned. I really appreciate it. I'm going to queue up some outro music here in just a second. And yeah, we will wrap this up. Again, thank you so very much. Let's see if I can figure this out. Can I click this button? And does it? There we go. See, this time I turned the microphone back on. All right. So check this out. This is my puppy Luke right here. Come here. Come here, buddy. Oh, come here. Come here. Oh, come here. You want to say hi to everybody? So a lot of you might remember. Come here, buddy. Up. Might remember Luke. He was a little puppy when I got him. Little tiny guy. Now he's a 80-pound lab. A couple years old. And then let's see this other one. This is my little monster dog. This is Rory. She's an Australian Shepherd. And yeah, she jumps all over the place. But yeah, these are my little pups. I'll show them at the end of the live stream. So I'm going to, again, cue up the outro music and hope to catch you all soon. Oh, it's echoing? Yeah, sorry. Oh, well, whatever. It is what it is. I appreciate y'all. I'm going to end the stream and hope to catch you guys on the next.